С вами я, Дженни, это College Russian. It's been a while since I've done a live stream. You probably were wondering if I am still alive. I am. It's just been a very busy summer. So we are back today, and we are going to do a song that anybody who has been in Moscow for a while definitely knows. It's kind of like Moscow's theme song, like New York by Frank Sinatra, but this one's for Moscow. So, in fact, let's listen to it. I have this cute little music box, that I bought at Izmailovsky Park in Moscow. Let's listen to it. Шорохи, все здесь замерло до утра. Anyway, so my kids love this. They think this is super cute. And that's the song that we're doing today, Podmoskovные вечера. So again, like I said, it's very famous. It's old. It's kind of a retro song, but it's a classic. And people would sing it at parties. People would sing it at parades. I remember on Victory Day, a big crowd got in a circle, and there was a guy playing the garmoshka, the accordion, and the whole crowd was singing this song. So it's a very popular song, and it's got some really great grammatical constructions in it. So let's go ahead and learn about this song. It was originally written by, wait for it, by Vasily Solovyov, and then it was the texts were written by Mikhail Matusovsky. And it was then sung by this guy, Vladimir Troshin, and I believe it was in a song of, in a movie of some sort, but I can't remember which movie it was. You know what's crazy is when my mom heard this music box, she started singing along to it, and I'm like, Mom, you're an American lady from Idaho. How do you know this song? Apparently, it had an English version that was very popular in the 50s as well, that she grew up listening to, like her parents would listen to it as well. So that was, there's an English version. There's versions in lots of different languages. Maybe if you know one of the languages that it exists in, maybe you could leave a link below. So first we got to start off. Originally, this song was going to be Leningradsky вечера, like the evenings in Leningrad, and then it got changed up to go with this movie. So we got to first understand what is Podmoskovye. So probably at the time of this song, Podmoskovye would have been the suburbs of Moscow. Nowadays, Podmoskovye is considered anything that's inside the Moskovskaya Oblast, like so in the state of Moscow, kind of. But back when this song was written, it would have been where you had your dacha, your country home. You'd go, to take care of your garden in the summer. So it would have been a very relaxing experience. As you can see, this is the map of Podmoskovye. And I was just remembering, see this little place, Chekhov, right here. I remember when I went out in 2004, I went down to visit some of my friends that were at a sports lager, like a sports camp. And we went down to the town of Chekhov. And that was my first time being in like the countryside in Russia. And I just loved it. It was so beautiful. This is a natural spring that was there. And we went and we like picked wild raspberries, and it was just so magical. So yeah, again, that's what Podmoskovye is. And then the word Podmoskovne, I just translated it as Moscow nights. Technically, if you want to get technical, it's like the suburbs of Moscow. Like, again, you would have been at your country home, your dacha kind of thing. So, хорошо. So we're going to do, the drill, how we do this. We first go through and we practice. For those of you who are just learning to read, read along with me. And learning music is one of the best things you can do, not only to improve your grammar and your vocabulary, but also your pronunciation. Because as you sing along to the music, those muscles in your mouth, those Russian muscles in your mouth, are getting practice. And you do need special muscles to speak the Russian language. We don't use them in English. They're much more up here in the front. You use your lips a lot more, etc. So read along with me as we go and start anticipating how all of these words translate. Хорошо. Не слышны в саду даже шорохи. Все здесь замерло до утра. Вот. Okay, хорошо. То. So let's go through. We'll do our awkward translation. So here in the red, we have our awkward translation, our word for word translation. And then the blue is our grammar breakdown. Okay, so slishny comes from the word slishit, and you can turn it into an adjective, right? So, and then this particular form is a short form adjective. So if a short form adjective is going to have a masculine, feminine, neuter, and then a plural. So slishny, we're getting the plural because of the shorahi, which are like rustles in the bushes, you know, the fluttering of the leaves kind of thing. So that's why we're getting a short form adjective in the ani form. Then we have sadu. A sad is like a flower garden or an orchard. A garot is a garden that has vegetables and stuff that you would kind of eat. So sadu, and then as you'll notice here, this is prepositional case, and it's an irregular ending. It's got an u. We have a lot of those in Russian. For example, в снегу, в шкафу, на полу, в Крыму, etc. And you just kind of memorize those as you go. Pretty soon I will have a case, kind of a textbook and class that you can take that will give a whole bunch of those examples of when you need those irregular prepositional endings. And then we have the plural of sharoch, which means like a rustling, and it's the subject of the sentence. So it's just getting nominative case. Then we go, всё. I'm going to show you, for my patrons over on Patreon, I have a really great worksheet for how to use and change this word всё. We have всё, which means everything, and все, which means everyone. So I'll show you a little bit. I'll give you a preview of that worksheet. So всё здесь замерла до утра. This comes from the word. There's actually nothing to do with freezing in here. It's more comes from the word mer, which means dying, right? So it's kind of like everything is kind of frozen in time, like it just holds still until the morning. Next, we have utra, which the original of it was utra, which is a neuter, but we're getting genitive case here because of do. Do forces genitive case. Okay, so that's why the o changed into an a when we put it into genitive case. Вот, следующий. Если бы знали вы, как мне дороги подмосковные вечера. Okay, so again, that's super weird for there just to be like a b in the middle of nowhere. So I like to pronounce it as если б. Если б, so put the b over here. Если бы знали вы, как мне дороги, not дороги. Дороги is a different word. It means roads. So this was дороги подмосковные вечера. Let's look at the grammar analysis here. So if we want to do something conditional, like if we do a если бы, then the verb, if only you would know, if you would know, or if you could know, then the conditional, the verb that is going to be in the conditional needs to be in past tense. So he's trying to say here, if only you could know, if only you knew, если бы знали вы. And that's why we're taking the verb знать and putting it into past tense, because of the бы. Anytime we have a бы of some sort, it's usually going to force a past tense of the verb. Вот. Как мне дороги. So dear, like precious, dear, to me. That's why we're getting dative case. We're getting мне, как мне дороги. And this is another short form adjective. So we would have something like дорог, дорога, дороги, дорого. Those are all short form adjectives. And we're getting the plural here because of evenings. Evenings is plural. So the thing that is dear to him are the Moscow evenings, the Podmoskovные вечера. Now, notice, most of you early learners in Russian, you'd probably look at this word, вечера, and you'd think, oh, it's a feminine, right? Because it has an a on the end. But you got to look at the adjectives in front of it. And sure enough, this is a plural adjective. There is not a scenario in which you would get a plural adjective paired with a feminine noun. You just wouldn't. So we have to say, oh, that must be one of those irregular masculine plurals that end in an a, and we'll talk more about them in just a second. There's a lot of them. So Podmoskovные вечера, вечера. It's an irregular masculine plural. Вот. Now we go to речка движется и не движется, вся из лунного серебра. Let's do a grammar breakdown. Речка. Речка is just like a little stream. You can make things little by putting in this sound in there. For example, let's see, what do I have around here? If you had something like бумага, we can make it small. Бумажка. We can even make it smaller than бумажка. We can turn it into бумажечка, right? Oh, it's interesting. I've got a different format here today. There we go. Now I see my comments. Ура! I thought like nobody's even here with me today. Вот. Вот. So now I can see everybody's comments. Не самая веселая песня. Почему вы так думаете, Depressive Marvin? Почему это не веселая песня? Вот, интересно. По-моему, это просто о Москве, о любви. Почему не современные песни? Because these are classics. And you want to know classics, right? So everybody, you know, people are still probably listening to the Beatles in English. People are still probably listening to the Rolling Stones, to Frank Sinatra, even though it's old, you know. My kids know the Beatles. My kids know Frank Sinatra. И когда-то классика надо знать. Вот. Приветствую вас из Уральских гор. Это супер. Я очень люблю горы. Кстати, очень скучаю по моим родным скалистым горам в Юте. Вот, она такая... вот, окей, хорошо. Привет всем, good. I'm now seeing the comments here, so that's good. Вот, да, Геннадий, он говорит, что сад – это тот, по которому гуляют. Да, вот, это очень хорошая заметка. So he's saying a sad is the one you would kind of like walk in for relaxation, and that's true. So it can translate as a garden, especially a flower garden in English, or an orchard, right? So orchards are very, you know, when they're blooming, they're very beautiful to walk in. Okay, so back to our grammar analysis. Речка движется. Look how crazy this, when I did research here, двигаться can conjugate in two different ways. It can conjugate as движется, or it can conjugate as двигается, which is very strange. I never realized that until researching this. So речка движется и не движется. Вся. So see, now we have another version of all or everything, right? And now we're getting a feminine because it's describing the речка. And by the way, like I said, I have a really great worksheet for this for my patrons, and then I'll kind of give you a preview of it, of the grammar there. Вся из лунного серебра. Okay, so now we're getting, the original of this was лунный, meaning the moon. And then we're turning it into an adjective, and we're getting a masculine genitive singular because of is. Is 100% of the time forces genitive case. The original here was a neuter. So it was originally cerebro, and now we're turning it into genitive singular, which now turns it into an a on the end. Вот. Хорошо. Следующий слайд. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти тихие вечера. Okay? Песня слышится и не слышится в эти тихие вечера. So let's look at the grammar here. Песня, that's just our nominative. It's a feminine. It's the subject of the sentence. And then we've got like a reflexive version of the verb слышать. Я слышу тебя. Or if we were to just say something like слышится, it is heard. It can be heard kind of thing. Слышится и не слышится в эти. Okay, this is technically getting accusative case, but it looks like nominative because it's not a feminine singular and it's not animate, right? It's not a living creature. Вот. Тихие вечера. Again, we look at the adjective here. We see a plural, so we know вечер, вечера is a plural as well. Oh, that formatting is ugly. So real quick, grammar time here is we're going to talk about some of those masculines that have a in the plural. So let me know, chat with me and let me know if you know some of those examples that have an irregular plural version. Вот, Геннадий говорит, Геннадий Солнечный говорит, движется, не движется, может восприниматься, как если волны есть, но в то же время нет течения как бы. Yep, so it's, in English, we would call this the ebb and flow. The ebb and flow of the river, right? So we kind of see ebb and flow. Ebb is when it holds still. Flow is when it goes, right? So that's a fancy way to say that in English. The ebb and flow of the river. Движется и не движется. Вот. Здесь не song was hearing. Okay. Anyway, so hello, добрый день, здравствуйте. Здравствуйте все носители, я рада вас видеть. Вот. Значит, so here are some examples of these irregular plurals. They're very common words, interestingly. Вечер, вечера, дом, дома, лес, леса, паспорт, паспорта. Can you think of any others? That's, again, that you kind of just memorize them as you go. You'll encounter them and you'll be like, oh, apparently that's a irregular. So something like учителя. What other ones can you think of? Учителя, поезда, глаза, братья, еще какие? Вот, города, большие города. Вот, есть такое песня. Хорошо. Так, so those are some of the grammar. That's just a fun little thing. Sometimes you'll get masculines that have a stressed ending in the plural. Вот. And then as I was telling you, the word everything, all, it gets, not only does it get genders, it gets cases as well. I'm sorry to break the news to you. So you might have something like весь город, весь день. Then we would have something like вся, and then we just saw that in the song, вся речка, the whole river has this ebb and flow because of the wind. Oh, good. So Black Rain says окна. Let me take a minute and tell you why this one is not an irregular, okay? Окна, it is irregular in that there's a weird stress shift, but it actually follows the pattern of what neuters do in the plural. If a neuter ends in an o, it gets an a ending. There's nothing irregular about it. Yeah. So окна is not an irregular plural necessarily because it was originally a neuter. And yes, it's totally normal for a neuter o ending to become an a in the plural. It is irregular in that it is it's a weird stress. The stress changes for some reason. It goes from окно to suddenly окна. Ooh, look at this. This is interesting. I think this, I'm not going to even try and pronounce a Hungarian name because Hungarian is a brutal language. But it looks like in Hungary, Podmoskovye means the banks of the river Moscow. So, that's interesting. So anything that maybe is along the river Moscow. Молодец. Да, вот Mary говорит, город, города, вместо из... Oh, okay. I don't know what that you're saying here. With like, братья, family members especially tend to be weird. And we talked about this in my weekly newsletter this week for my patrons over on Patreon. We had, some of these crazy irregulars. Brat goes to братья. Ooh, interesting. Depressive Marvin говорит, волосы, волосся. Oh, that's like current day modern Ukrainian. Volosya is how you say your hair in Russian. Okay. DJ asks a great question. So he says, now I'm getting confused again. Goroda is also the genitive singular form as well as город. Okay, хороший вопрос. Okay, listen to the word stress. У этого города, right? So города is the genitive singular. Now города, word stress, is nominative plural. Большие города, вот, я люблю большие города. I love big cities. But if you say something like из этого города, do you hear the word stress? So good, great question. Don't be confused. It's all about the word stress. They look the same. They have different word stresses. So if it's pronounced, if you're wanting to say cities, I love big cities, and there's no genitive needed, города, города. Good. Depressive Marvin says, когда два чего-то. That's a native's way of trying to explain the genitive case. So, два города, да, я хорошо знаю два города в России, etc. So, anything that would make you need genitive singular. Недалеко от этого города, после этого города, etc. Okay, so that's genitive singular. Хороший вопрос. Вот. Следующий. Okay, so now let's look at some of these examples. You need to understand the difference between все, when there are the no dots on top, and when there are the dots on top, okay? So when there are the dots on top, it translates as an everything or all of something. When there are no dots on top, it translates as everyone, right? So мы все любим русский язык. Everyone here, every one of us, we all love Russian language. Oh, but now look at this one. This one's not an everything because it's not talking about people, right? So я люблю все, pronounced exactly the same way, русские песни. Okay, so when it's not talking about a person, that's where we would now, it cannot be everyone. That doesn't make any sense to say, I love everyone Russian songs. Nope. In this context, it means I love all Russian songs, and we're getting the plural because песни is plural. Okay? Вот. Я знаю всю его семью. Okay, его should not be capitalized. That's a typo. Я знаю всю его семью. Okay, so look at this. The word все also gets cases. Okay, so семья was a feminine. So we got вся, and then we're knowing it, so we need to put it into accusative. We come down here on the chart. Sure enough, всю. Я знаю всю его семью. Я люблю всю русскую литературу, etc. Okay, let's see. Depressive Marvin's got a lot of great comments here, but I'm not going to put them on the screen. Just definitely read them afterward. Super interesting stuff about the history of the Russian language. Вот. Which city is your favorite? Moscow or St. Petersburg? Это легко. Москва. И точка. Все. So that's going to offend some people, but да, я очень люблю Москву. Вот, просто такое ощущение, когда ты впервые бываешь на Красной площади. Нет, это просто как в сказке, знаешь, вот такое ощущение. Я никогда не забуду вот это ощущение. Мой первый раз на Красной площади. Санкт-Петербург – это, конечно, очень красивый, интересный город, но это представляет собой время, когда Россия очень старалась быть Европой, да? А мне очень нравится уникальность России. И вот эта уникальность отражается именно в Москве. И я знаю, что теперь Москва довольно современный город и, конечно, довольно такой, вот как по-западному даже выглядит теперь. Но мне очень нравится все вот это более как подлинная русская архитектура. А в Санкт-Петербурге мне очень нравится, что и там много историй всех моих любимых авторов и так далее. Вот почему Санкт-Петербург мне нравится. Ну, чтобы в каком городе я бы хотела жить, и в каком городе я бы могла гулять каждый день, всю ночь до утра, это Москва. А вот, вы знаете, что Москва – это финно-угорское слово, красивое место означает. Интересно. Вот, кажется, Depressive Marvin очень хорошо знает историю языка. Зивер спрашивает, how long did you live in Moscow? Очень слишком короткое время, к сожалению. Я жила в Москве чуть меньше 2 лет. So a little bit less than 2 years. Я хотела там жить долго-долго, но у меня была проблема с документами, и мне пришлось поехать домой. были в городах Золотого кольца. Okay, so depressive Marvin, this is actually a good thing to know. If you've been in Moscow, there's what's called the Golden Ring. It's the Golden Ring around Moscow, and it's these series of really beautiful churches. And so I've only been in Suzdal, and I don't know if Sergeyev Posad is considered Zolotoye Kольцо. But yeah, so I've been in Suzdal and Vladimir also. I've been in Vladimir. Wait, was it? No, Yaroslavl. So I've been to 2 of the cities on the Golden Ring. But, okay, хорошо. Вот, хорошо. Следующий. So as you can see, like I said, I have a great, beautiful worksheet to go with this over on for my patrons over on Patreon. I'm going to tell you there's lots of fun stuff happening over on Patreon. So I'll tell you all about that. Anytime I do one of these live streams, I have beautiful, beautiful worksheets to accompany it over on Patreon. So for example, all of this breakdown that I'm doing for the texts, it's all over there on Patreon. Like you can see it all laid out in front of you. You can print this out, write your own notes on it, and then you can do some fun worksheets just to practice your grammar. So I have this. I also have one on the word этот and how that one changes for gender and cases. Again, all really great. Again, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 15 years, and I have just insane amounts of worksheets that I've used over the years in my classroom. So хорошо. So again, go over to Patreon. I'll link to it in the description box, and I'll tell you some more fun stuff that we've been doing over there. Хорошо, дальше. Вот. Что ж ты, милая, смотришь из коса? Окей. Потом, низко голову наклоня. Вот. So now let's do our grammar breakdown. Someday I will try and do a little bit, I'll elaborate on this je a little bit more. It just intensifies the previous word, right? So in English, we might say something like, what on earth are you looking at there, right? Like, what on earth kind of thing. So it kind of intensifies it a little bit. Then we have mili. This means sweet, not like dessert, not like cookies or candy. Sweet as in a person's personality. So milaya, you could say sweetheart, sweetie, etc. Смотришь. Смотришь comes from the verb смотреть, and it's the ты conjugation. Из коса. This one, it's like, when you look, I'm trying to demonstrate, like when you look sideways. So she's kind of doing this, like with her head and looking sideways. Низко, this comes from the adjective низкий. And here, when we see this o ending on the end, a lot of the times, maybe 70% of the time, it's an adverb. So lowly, like, putting your head down low, it becomes an adverb to do something quickly, correctly, etc. Голову, okay, then you're going to be like you're doing something to your head. You're bending it down. And that's why it's getting accusative case, because it's a feminine singular. Вот. Somebody's asking me a question. Вот. Он спрашивает, какие преимущества и что в целом дает знание русского языка для жителя Америки? Скорее удовольствие. Да, вот. Люди всегда, как им очень интересно, какой интересный язык, откуда ты знаешь, и так далее. И, конечно, если ты хочешь работать на государство, у тебя будет много возможностей. Но такая работа меня не интересует. Я не хочу сидеть в офисе целый день, поэтому, да, я слишком творческий такой человек. Ooh, good. Michael Thorne says this about to look askance at somebody, to give somebody a dirty look. Да, вот, это очень хороший перевод. Давайте сделаем маленький опрос. Как вы думаете, в этом контексте из коса значит, как она как-то недовольна им, или она немножко робко ведет себя? Я бы сказала, что она чувствует себя робкой, она стесняется, и вот почему она вот так делает. Но Еще один перевод из сказать тоже значит, like, right, to give somebody a dirty look. Вот. Недовольна. Да, вот Геннадий так говорит. Вот. Speak Russian says she's afraid. Интересно. Как вы думаете, чего она боится? Чего она боится в этот момент? Интересно. Okay, so yeah, we have some disagreement. So Speak Russian says she's afraid. Добрыня Никитыч говорит, она робко ведет себя. She's being shy. Yeah, so that's an interesting one that could be translated in different ways. Хорошо, вот это слово меня очень сильно мучает. Наклонья. Apparently, this is incorrect. Okay, so this should technically be наклоняя. Like there is no word наклоня. I could not find it in dictionaries. It should technically be наклоняя. This is not even a typo. This is like how the text is. But according to Wiki Словарь, наклоня is not a word that exists, but it technically would mean like bowing your head down. Okay, the consensus seems to be that она стесняется, she's being shy, right? She's being reserved, and he loves her, and he's going to tell her, right, exactly, вот, да, speak Russian, я с вами согласна, наклонив. Но в песне поется так, наклоня. И просто это ошибка или вот, может быть, они так говорили в это время? Спасибо. Depressive Marvin знает. Он говорит, это старая форма. Да. То есть должно быть, right? So I was just saying that this word doesn't exist now. It should either be наклоняя or наклонив, having done that. But I'm telling you, I'm not lying. In the song, they say наклоня, низко голову наклоня. Yep, good. So, хорошо, отлично. Вот, and by the way, this is a verbal adverb. We can do that. Говоря, честно говоря, смотря, стоя. Those are all verbal adverbs, and they're formed from the они conjugation. Hold on, give me a second. I got to think here. Yes, they're formed from the они ending, and then you put a я on the end. Вот. Окей, очень хорошо. Да, очень хорошо. Следующий. Трудно высказать и не высказать все, что на сердце у меня. Вот. Okay, so now let's look at the grammar. Трудно. Again, this comes from the adjective трудный. And here we're turning it into an adverb and or a short form adjective, which is a neuter. And then высказать is to express, to say out. Remember, you know how I love prefixes. Вы means to out, and the to say out, to express, right? To say it out. So it's difficult to express, but also not to express. Все, что на сердце у меня. Вот. So it's difficult for him to express. We're getting the perfective here, and it's the infinitive because we're saying it's difficult to say, difficult to express. Then we say все, all, or it could also be everything, everything. Что на сердце. This is technically in prepositional case, but because the original also ended in a ye, we don't see the prepositional ending. And then this little word here, у меня. This is a very... молодец, вот какая интересная заметка. Высказать и не высказать, это как будто я хочу, но стесняюсь. Like you want to say something, but you're being shy, right? So they're both being shy. The girl's being shy, and he's being shy. Вот. Okay, so let's talk about this. Some of my students have asked me this. You know, why do I always hear у меня, and then it translates as to my in English? So у меня might translate into English sometimes as a very like folksy of mine. Everything that's in this heart of mine. Or for example, you might say something like Дима у нас спортсмен. So that's a very confusing for an English speaker who has learned that у нас means to have. Okay, but it can also be again a a folksy way of saying, oh, Dima of ours is this Dima of ours is he's a sportsman. Kind of like we say this in English. You know what I'm talking about? Like, oh, that little child of mine, kind of thing. Like this child that I have, but the English equivalent it would be of like that son of yours, вот этот сын у вас очень хорошо знает, right? So, and that's the way we say it in English. We would say, oh, that kid of yours, that boyfriend of yours, right? So something like that. So again, it's kind of a more folksy way of saying like my kind of thing, more folksy way. Okay, хорошо. Дальше. And then у меня, we're getting genitive because of the у. У always forces genitive case. Это у меня на душе. Это не что-то материальное. Вот, очень хорошо. Good. So he's saying у меня, like, that he has, it's not something material that he has, it's just like a feeling that he has. Вот. Okay, теперь, now we're getting into the last verse. А рассвет уже все заметнее. Так, пожалуйста, будь добра. Okay, grammar breakdown here. So the sunrise, рассвет, that's nominative, nothing's happening to it. Уже, this is so hard to translate sometimes. It does translate as already, but it can also mean some different things too. If you speak Spanish or Portuguese, they do it, the ja or ya in Spanish has the same exact meaning. We don't have a perfect word for it sometimes, but yeah, already. And then in this case, все is not meaning all or everything. It's like all the more. Oh, and it's even getting even more kind of like все еще, все. Yeah, so it's like even more. It's even more noticeable. And then we have a really fun comparative word here. So a lot of comparatives, meaning the equivalent of English er, would be, sometimes they have these ye. And what does he say? Здесь заметнее, как глагол работает. Я вас не поняла. Я не очень понимал, в чем, что вы имеете в виду здесь. So, заметный, so in Russian, especially if the adjective ends in a ny, you can put a ye on the end of it and it turns it into an er. And then guess what? It no longer has gender anymore. So you could say things like красивее, интереснее. And just to warn you, not all adjectives get ye when they become er. Some of them are больше, меньше, выше, тише, хуже, right? So you just have to memorize those, but this ye ending, a lot of times it means a comparative, er, like the equivalent of er in English. Так, пожалуйста, будь добра. Будь добра. So we're getting the ты command form here. If it was plural, it would be будьте. Будьте. Так. So you're saying будь добра, and then we have a short form adjective, right? We would have something like добр, добра, добро, добры, etc., etc. Вот, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Не забудь. Okay, this blew my mind when I realized that забыть, it just is essentially a prefixed version of быть, right? So it like has conjugations, забуду, забудешь, забудет, забудем. And then that's why this looks very similar to будь, because забыть is just a prefixed version of быть. Isn't that interesting? And I only realized that a few years ago. So don't forget, не забудь и ты эти летние подмосковные вечера. Okay, so grammar analysis there is, again, the command form. Не забудь, to a group of people would be не забудьте. Ты эти летние вечера. On my Patreon, for my patrons, I have a worksheet of how to change up the word this for gender and for cases as well. And then летний, so you don't forget these summer nights. And again, this is all plural, эти летние подмосковные, because it's describing вечера, which is a plural. Now, вот Геннадий говорит, будь добра, это сделай что-то. Yep, so in English, this would be like, would you be so kind as to? Would you do me a favor? Right? Would you do me a favor? So you're getting ready. You're getting ready to ask somebody to do something. So, будь добра. There's another one that's even fancier. Будьте любезны. Again, like be courteous kind of thing. Would you be so nice as to? Yes, speak Russian. We already talked about that at the beginning of the stream. We talked about how it's actually the surrounding areas of Moscow. Not necessarily Moscow exactly, but in English, this song, when they translated this song into English, they translated as Midnight in Moscow, right? Because the average foreigner doesn't know that Podmoskovye is technically the suburbs of Moscow, etc., etc. Вот. Okay, хорошо. Теперь, so real quick, one last little grammar thing. These are some of the most common times you'll hear будь, right? So let me know in the comments other examples of this будь. You're telling somebody to be something. Most common is when somebody sneezes, you say будь здоров. Будь здоров. If you're talking to a girl, будь здорова, right? If you're talking to a group of people, I guess everybody sneezed. Будьте здоровы. Будьте здоровы. Be healthy. Be healthy. And then who can tell me what song this is from? This is a song we did a live stream on one time. Не будь ко мне жестоко. Не будь ко мне жестоко. Anybody know what song that is? Не будь ко мне жестоко. See if anybody can know it, and then I'll sing it for you. Вот. And then the last one, it's kind of hid here by comment. Будьте готовы. Okay, so if you were a pioneer in Soviet Union, pioneer were kind of like the kind of similar to the scouts, but they were Soviet. Their slogan was the same as our scouts, right? Which is like what, always ready or something. Their slogan was будь готов. In fact, there's a song about it. Будь готов всегда всем, something like that. So it means be ready, be ready. And then I think there's some other examples of something like будь бдителен or something, which would mean like be cautious, be on guard kind of thing. So yeah, будь is the imperative in the informal. You're just somebody casual, будь. And then budte with a little te on the end, budte, is if you're commanding a group of people or speaking formally. Good. Okay, so Gennadi's saying this. Спасибо, Michael. Это даже не носитель. Вот, Michael, he guessed the song. Молодец. Не будь ко мне жестоко. Прекрасная далека, не будь ко мне жестоко. So you're saying, beautiful, far away, distance, don't be cruel to me. Молодец, Michael. Я очень впечатлена. Молодец. Очень хорошо. Good. So again, think of any other examples you can think of with будь in there. It's a command form. It's like be this. Be that thing. Okay, хорошо. So again, I'm going to tell you all about my Patreon. It's been so fun. We have been doing weekly conversation clubs. We've got a Discord group going that's super funny. You know, we go in there and ask you. I've got native Russians in there. They come in and ask for help in English. You know, we talk about funny things. So for example, we were just talking about the other day, the difference between the word maniac in English and the word maniak in Russian. Oi. Welcome from Brazil. Eu falo no português quase todos os dias, porque minha sogra é brasileira, meu marido também é brasileiro, e minha sogra não fala no inglês, e para isso eu preciso de falar sempre no português, mas eu muito mal falo no português. Good. So yeah, the conversation group in Discord, this is accessible to anybody, any patron at any level. So we were talking about maniac versus maniac. In maniac, I can call my kids a maniac. I can be like, "Oh, you little maniac, you get over here," right? And in the Russian Discord, they thought that was so funny because in Russian, a maniac, written almost exactly the same, means a serial killer. So to a Russian, it sounds like I'm calling my child a serial killer. So yeah, just fun. We talk about these fun little cultural and linguistic differences. Again, people come on and ask a grammar question, like who was the grammar question the other day that we were talking about? Anyway, so we've got the Discord group for my patrons. Да, Серж, я с вами на 100% согласна, потому что, да, у меня точно русский акцент. Я акаю на португальском языке, когда я говорю, это очень смешно. Вот. So anyway, again, the Discord group, weekly conversation clubs, and they've been so fun. We were talking about like stereotypes. Everybody was talking about where they're from. What stereotypes do people have about their city, about their country? And у нас есть носители, которые практикуют английский, мы им помогаем, потом мы все говорим по-русски, и носители нам помогают. Вот это вообще здорово, это здорово. So yeah, the conversation clubs are so fun. And then one of my favorite things too that I've been doing are these weekly newsletters. So you'll have vocab to kind of practice at each different level, beginning, intermediate, and advanced, a grammar challenge, a song of the week, and then just fun little interesting facts from culture, like, oh, you should watch this documentary. It's super fascinating. Did you know that in Russian culture, blah, blah, blah. So you get those every week. That's super fun. And then, like I said, the weekly conversation clubs are so fun. We've been having lots of people come. Кстати, вот носители, я хочу вас пригласить вот, когда угодно. То есть вам не надо быть у меня патроном, вам не надо поддерживать меня. Я думаю, что просто как для нас это всегда очень интересно общаться с носителями. И если вы практикуете английский, вы хотите найти партнера, вот это как раз то место, где вы можете найти. Кстати, они уже, некоторые вот из этих патронов или вот из этих вот зрителей, которые вот сейчас участвуют на этом клубе, они уже вот между собой теперь общаются. То есть, да, я очень рекомендую, и я с удовольствием вам приму. То есть пишите мне, пожалуйста, в collegerussian@gmail.com. Половина времени мы говорим на английском, половина времени на русском. И всегда очень интересно для всех. So again, we'll have a conversation club coming up this Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, East Coast. So that's 5 p.m. in Moscow. So yeah, again, that's available for my patrons. Patrons get some fun stuff. They're going to get also the worksheets that I was telling you about today, the grammar charts, access to this Discord group. It's always super fun. And I think, like I said, the conversation club is getting really fun. We're all getting to be very comfortable with each other. И так далее. То есть я очень рекомендую, потому что даже если вы думаете, о, я не так хорошо говорю по-английски, или я плохо еще говорю по-русски, if you think your Russian's not good enough to come to a conversation club, just come and observe and just be happy about, like what you do understand. Not to mention, I have 15 years of classroom teaching experience, so I know how to help people feel comfortable. I'll only call on you for something I know you know how to answer. I'm not, my whole goal as a teacher is to motivate you and to help you feel excited about the language, not to shame you and, make you feel stupid. So it's one of the best things you can do to kind of just at the end of every week, use what you've been practicing. And we have specific topics every week that we talk about in the conversation club. So, вот. Хорошо, это все. I'll leave my Patreon information in the description box. And by the way, if you have any requests for songs or poems, let me know. Apparently, Depressive Marvin thought that this was too depressing of a song, but maybe that's because he himself is depressive. I don't know. So, вот такие дела. Хорошо, это все. Увидимся на следующей неделе. И как я уже говорила, если вы хотите побывать на этих клубах, пишите мне, пожалуйста, в collegerussian@gmail.com. Я с удовольствием поделюсь с вами нашей ссылкой. Вот, хорошо, это все. Спасибо, что пришли. Спасибо за все комментарии. И это все. До свидания, Даня, до следующей недели.